Welcome to today's deep dive. So, I want you to imagine waking up to a morning that is just absolutely perfectly crisp. You know the kind I mean.
Oh, absolutely. The best kind of morning.
Right. You look out the window and there's no mist. There's no blur, no morning haze lingering in the air at all. Every single color outside is sharply defined. And right there, straight ahead, you see a perfect razor-sharp line, exactly where a massive lake meets the open sky.
It's a really powerful visual.
It really is. And in today's deep dive, we're taking that exact image, that horizontal line, and using a brilliant philosophical text to completely reframe how you view your own potential.
Yeah, because it gets right to the core of this profound paradox we're unpacking today.
Exactly. So our mission today is to explore an excerpt from a philosophical narrative titled The Human Being as a Limited Line. Specifically, we're looking at a synthesis of chapters 19 through 22. And the goal here is to figure out why embracing your boundaries and actually allowing yourself to experience the painful friction of your own limits might be the only true way you can ever comprehend infinity.
Which sounds totally contradictory at first. I mean, embracing a limit to understand the limitless.
Yeah, it feels like a total oxymoron.
It does. But to really grasp how that works, we have to look at how the text defines growth in the preceding chapters. Right, the chapters 19 and 20.
Right, bring us up to speed on that.
So it sets up a very specific foundation for what it means to innovate. It frames true innovation not as constantly churning out something shiny and new, but rather as an internal rebirth.
An internal rebirth, I like that.
Yeah, it's the awakening of timeless wisdom that already exists inside you.
Yeah.
And the narrative uses this gorgeous imagery to explain it.
Right, the eagle and the river.
Exactly. It pairs the soaring eagle with the flowing river.
Yeah.
The mechanics of that metaphor are really what drive the whole philosophy. The eagle represents ambitious strength. It's the drive to achieve, to fly higher, to consume a massive perspective of the world. But ambition on its own has a fatal flaw.
Because you just keep going up and up.
Yes. If you are just constantly soaring and consuming, always reading another book, taking another course, trying to acquire more and more knowledge, you eventually just become bloated and disconnected.
You burn out. You get totally overwhelmed by the sheer altitude of everything you're trying to take in.
Right, which is why the text pairs the eagle with the flowing river, because the river represents humble service. It moves downward, it grounds itself, and it nourishes the land around it.
So it's about balance.
Exactly. The argument here is that a truly conscious life requires the integration of both. You have to take that high-level ambition, the things you are learning and striving for, and channel it downward into practical action that serves humanity.
Wow.
You merge your personal growth into the broader current of the world. That synthesis of consuming and giving is what triggers that internal rebirth.
That is so relevant for you listening right now, especially if you're the kind of person who is always trying to upgrade your skills or master a massive new subject. This text is going to provide a massive aha moment.
Oh, absolutely.
If you've ever felt completely paralyzed by the sheer weight of everything you don't yet know, we're talking about finding a way to continuously grow without getting crushed by the infinite amount of information out there.
And that abstract idea of balancing ambition and grounded reality, that's exactly what sets the stage for the transformative morning of day 5 in the narrative.
Right, day 5. So the main perspective character, the nephew, wakes up to this unprecedented clarity.
Like the crisp morning you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. The mist that usually drifts across the lake is just gone. The text describes it beautifully. It says the lake has polished its own mirror. So the nephew parts the curtains, looks out the window, and his eyes lock onto that literal horizon we talked about at the start. He sees the blue water, then a sharp line, and then the blue sky. And looking at this, he thinks to himself, everything has a limit. The water ends here, the sky begins there.
And in that pristine clarity, that observation carries immense weight for him. He isn't just looking at the landscape,
Yeah.
He's internalizing it.
Yeah, he whispers to himself, perhaps I am a thin line drawn between limitation and infinity.
Or realization.
Right. The text notes that this thought felt like a long-awaited guest knocking gently at the door of his heart. It wasn't entirely a new thought, but it finally arrived with total clarity.
He recognizes that his very existence is situated right at the juncture of what is finite, like his physical body, his current knowledge, the hours in his day,
Right.
and what is infinite, the universe,
Yeah.
endless possibility, the collective wisdom of humanity.
Think of it like drawing borders on a map, like the Earth doesn't actually have giant black lines running across the dirt.
No, obviously not.
It's a continuous stretch of land. We draw those lines to make sense of the space, to be able to navigate it, and we do the exact same thing with our own capacities. We draw lines around our brains and our schedules saying, well, this is what I can handle, and everything past this line is too much.
That's a great analogy. And just as he has this profound realization about his own boundaries, his uncle walks into the room.
Yeah, the uncle enters with this profound calm. He walks straight over to the window, gives the horizon a slight nod, and actually greets it.
Greets the horizon.
Yeah. The text says he greets it as one greets an old companion.
Oh, I love that.
And when the nephew admits that the line on the lake feels like it's speaking to him, the uncle just smiles and says, of course it is. Because that line is an illusion created by your sight.
The uncle is pointing out the literal physical reality there.
Right.
The lake and the sky never truly touch. There is no physical black line hovering out there over the water, yet, as the uncle explains, the human mind must separate them.
Yeah, there's a crucial quote here, right?
Yes. He says that is how the human being understands infinity, by drawing a limited line.
I want to dig into the cognitive mechanics of that for a second. Why must the mind separate them?
Well, because we are finite biological organisms trying to process an infinite universe.
Right. Our brains would just overload.
Exactly. If we were to perceive the seamless, unbounded reality of the universe all at once, it would break us. It would be a blinding, incomprehensible blur of information. Our sensory organs and our cognitive processing power have hard limits.
Oh.
So our mind creates a horizon. It creates a boundary as a psychological survival mechanism so that we have a reference point to stand on while we look at the infinite.
So the line isn't a barrier keeping us out. It's a tool helping us see.
Perfectly said.
Once the nephew realizes this, that line out on the lake is no longer just a line to him. It's a profound mechanism for understanding his place in the universe.
But the uncle knows that realizing this inside a cozy cabin isn't enough.
Right. Philosophy means absolutely nothing if it doesn't survive contact with reality. They have to actually go outside and test it.
Yeah. Moving from theory to physical action is the essential pivot here. The uncle steps back from the window and declares that today they will climb the hill outside. And his reasoning is brilliant. He says to understand limitation, one must rise a little.
And the nephew asks what they're going to see at the top of this hill, and the uncle says they will see ourselves and what surpasses us.
He's promising a vantage point where they can observe both their own finite nature and the infinite expanse simultaneously.
But right before they walk out the door, the uncle drops a massive philosophical anchor. He says, remember, my nephew, when a human being knows his limit, he expands.
Which is the central paradox of the entire text.
Wait, hold on. I'm stuck on this paradox.
Okay, let's unpack it.
If I hit a literal wall, a limit, I am stopped. My world literally shrinks to the size of whatever box I'm in. So how can the uncle claim that knowing your limit is the thing that makes you expand?
Well, think about the psychology of the learner. When you are faced with an infinite amount of knowledge, like every book you haven't read, every skill you haven't mastered, what happens?
You freeze. You get decision fatigue and end up just scrolling on your phone because picking one thing feels like you're missing out on a million other things.
Precisely. Trying to grasp infinity all at once paralyzes you. Setting a boundary saying, I cannot learn everything today, my limit is just mastering this one specific concept, remaps your brain's ability to process information.
Interesting.
You aren't creating a cage. You are creating a structured, focused space where your mind can finally organize the data and do deep work.
Oh, it's like a painter's canvas.
How so?
Well, you can't actually start painting a masterpiece until you have edges. If you just have infinite space, where do you put the first brush stroke?
You wouldn't know where to start.
Right, you'd just be waving your brush in the air forever. The edges of the canvas, the limits, they force you to make a decision. They give you the exact space needed to create. By defining the limit, you give your abilities a place to exist and grow.
That is a fantastic analogy. The boundary provides the necessary friction for action. Without the canvas, there's no painting. Without the horizon, the sky and water are just a blur. By knowing the limit, you paradoxically unlock your capacity to push against it and eventually expand it.
And pushing against it is exactly what they're about to do next, because the philosophical revelation in the cabin transitions directly into the physical reality of chapter 22.
Right, they actually start the hike.
They step outside to start this climb, and the text sets an incredibly atmospheric scene. The air is still cool. There's a light breeze moving from the lake through the reeds, and it describes the sound like a faint reed flute.
Mm-hmm.
It brings a feeling of freshness mixed with a quiet call.
It's very sensory grounding after all that high-level abstract thought. And it's in this physical environment that we meet the third character, Roger.
Roger, yes. Roger's standing there, adjusting his backpack, getting his gear perfectly situated for the hike.
Classic Roger.
Very prepared. He looks up at the path and remarks that the clear air is perfect for measurements. He laughs softly and admits he isn't a measuring device himself, but he says, still, on clear days, thoughts tend to flow more accurately.
Roger introduces a very different framework for navigating the world. He represents the analytical mind.
He's the guy who wants to quantify the air clarity to optimize his thought process.
Exactly.
And honestly, I get it. Roger's the modern learner. We all want to track our progress, measure our reading speed, use spreadsheets to monitor our habits, wear smartwatches to track our physiological responses to stress.
Oh, absolutely.
When you're facing down the infinite, relying on metrics and clear, hard data is a completely logical, rational defense mechanism. We want a dashboard that proves we are growing.
It's an entirely valid approach, and the uncle treats it with respect.
Yeah.
The text notes that the uncle smiles at Roger with a gentle weariness in his wisdom. He doesn't dismiss the analytical approach at all.
Right. He doesn't tell Roger he's wrong.
No, he tells Roger, your mathematics of thought colors our journey. But today, we will listen not to equations. We will listen to the language of lines.
The mathematics of thought versus the language of lines.
The uncle is acknowledging that logic, measurement, and optimization have their place in coloring the journey. They help us track where we've been. But profound self-discovery, the kind of expansion that comes from truly encountering the edge of your own capabilities, requires stepping outside purely analytical thinking.
You can't spreadsheet your way into experiencing the infinite.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because metrics only measure what you already know how to quantify. They measure the safe zone. The language of lines requires stepping into the unquantifiable space where you actually meet your own boundary.
And the text immediately reinforces that learning this language is going to extract a physical toll.
It demands an encounter with reality.
The author includes these very specific physical details right after the exchange with Roger. The nephew looks over and notices that the uncle is holding his walking cane much more firmly. He isn't looking at the steep, rocky path right in front of him. He's looking beyond it, toward the sky. The physical reality of the incline makes the nephew worry. He asks the uncle if he's sure they should do this because the path looks incredibly steep.
And the uncle's response provides the emotional climax of the excerpt.
What does he say?
He tells the nephew, to understand a limit, one must rise. And to experience a limit, one must sometimes grow tired.
The text says those words grew heavier in the clear morning air, like stones dropped gently into water. And then, without another word, the three of them begin to walk.
To experience a limit, one must sometimes grow tired. If we anchor this in reality for you listening right now, this is the ultimate truth of any meaningful pursuit. Growth isn't just a mental exercise that happens while you're drinking coffee and looking out a window on a clear morning.
No, real growth demands friction.
Exactly. When you're trying to master a difficult new coding language or you're wrestling with a dense, complicated project at work, your brain literally hurts. You get that brain fog, that deep cognitive fatigue, where you feel like you just can't process another sentence.
Yeah, I know that feeling well. And we usually interpret that fatigue as a signal that we aren't smart enough.
We view the fatigue as a failure. But what the uncle is revealing is that the fatigue is the literal physiological sensation of the horizon expanding.
Wow.
You cannot fully comprehend your boundaries until you push against them hard enough to feel them pushing back. That headache you get when studying a complex subject isn't a sign to quit. It is the sensory experience of the limit itself.
And since we already established that knowing your limit is the prerequisite for expanding it, that exhaustion is actually the physical proof that your capacity is growing.
Precisely. It fundamentally changes how you view the struggle.
The struggle isn't in the way of the learning. The struggle is the learning.
Yeah.
Let's pull all of these threads together because the narrative takes us on a masterfully structured journey. We started with the concept of internal rebirth. We learned that to truly innovate, you have to merge the soaring ambition of the eagle with the humble, grounded service of the river.
Which brought us to the realization at the window.
Right. The nephew, seeing the literal horizon line and understanding that his own mind creates that boundary to make sense of the infinite universe. He is the thin line drawn between limitation and infinity.
And finally, we moved out of the cabin and to the base of the steep hill. We contrasted Roger's comfortable logical mathematics of thought with the uncle's language of lines.
Realizing that you can't just analyze your way to growth, you have to climb. You have to actively seek out your limits and welcome the deep cognitive and physical fatigue that comes with them, because that friction is the only way your canvas actually gets bigger.
It's a brilliant progression from internal theory to visual observation to demanding physical action. And the excerpt leaves us right at the very beginning of their ascent.
Yeah, the narrative continues this exact journey in the original text in chapter 23, which is titled The Silent Teaching of the Slope, and chapter 24, The First Lessons of the Descent. So the physical climb, the brutal struggle of the incline, and the eventual return are all part of this continuous process of learning the language of lines.
Which leaves us with a fascinating implication.
Ooh, what's that?
Well, if the horizon is just an optical illusion created by our minds, and we have to climb higher to push that boundary back, there's something else we need to chew on. Think about how a horizon actually works in the real world.
It moves.
Exactly. Every time you take a step up that hill, the horizon shifts further away. You never actually reach it, which means you're never actually going to reach infinity or total understanding.
Right. The limit will always be there, just a little further out.
So think about the biggest, most absolute limit you feel you have in your life right now. What if that limit is just an optical illusion created by your current vantage point? What if the goal of learning, the goal of all this ambition and service, isn't to finally arrive at a state of total mastery?
Then what is it?
What if the real joy is simply in the act of pushing the horizon back, inch by inch, and experiencing that beautiful, tiring friction for the rest of your life? All you need to do to see that the limit doesn't actually exist is just climb a little higher.
You never run out of sky, and you never run out of campus. It's a lifelong climb.
It really is.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. Whatever steep path you're looking at right now, embrace the fatigue, keep pushing the boundary, and keep climbing.